Welcome to HFY Galaxy Tales. Like this video and subscribe the channel for more HFY stories. The testing chamber hummed with anticipation, its walls lined with observation panels where 17 species watched with what their various anatomies allowed for smug satisfaction. I was there too, third row, thorax vibrating with what I told myself was professional interest but was honestly closer to schadenfreude. We had done it. Finally. After 300 cycles of candidates waltzing through our evaluations like they were shopping for nutrition paste, we had created something beautiful. Something impossible. The gauntlet of infinite variables, we called it. My colleague Brix from accounting suggested we call it the no way protocol, but administration vetoed that for being too honest. Subject approaching, announced Ven, our lead coordinator, her vocal sacs pulsing with barely contained glee. Through the reinforced viewing port, I watched the human shuffle into the assessment zone. Not march. Not stride. Shuffle. Like he had just woken up from cryo-sleep and someone had forgotten to mention it to his legs. His identification read Marcus Webb, Origin Planet Earth, Application Purpose, Engineering Core Placement. He wore the standard-issue gray jumpsuit that somehow looked more wrinkled on him than on any species I had ever processed. His hair stuck up at angles that defied 3 different gravitational theories. Is he, yawning? Kless, the Zentari observer next to me, leaned forward, his eye stalks practically pressing against the glass. The human was indeed yawning. Mouth open wide enough to swallow a small moon, completely unconcerned that 47 pairs of eyes, stalks, and sensory organs were analyzing his every movement. Begin phase 1, Ven commanded, his tone dripping with anticipation. The floor beneath Marcus Webb split open, revealing a chasm that dropped into calculated infinity. Well, not actual infinity, that would violate 17 safety regulations, but deep enough that the bottom disappeared into artfully placed shadow effects. Platforms materialized in a sequence so complex it required quantum processors to generate. Each platform would exist for exactly 2.3 seconds before vanishing. Standard protocol, candidates would panic, calculate trajectories, utilize their species-specific abilities. The Yarvex usually tried to fly. The Kronthum would attempt to manipulate gravity. The Selkies would just scream, which, fair enough. Marcus Webb looked down into the abyss, looked up at the platforms, then looked directly at our observation window. Seriously, he said. My translator implant worked overtime to convey the specific blend of exhaustion and disbelief in that single word. He can't see us, Ven muttered, though his confidence had developed a crack you could pilot a shuttle through. The human sat down. Just sat down, cross-legged, right there on the edge of the chasm. What is he doing? Kless whispered. Waiting, apparently, I responded, watching with growing unease as Marcus Webb pulled something from his pocket. A small rectangular object, primitive technology, what the humans called a protein bar. He unwrapped it with the care of someone defusing a bomb, then took a bite. He chewed. Slowly. Deliberately. Maintaining eye contact with our observation window the entire time. This is unprecedented, Ven said, flipping through assessment protocols on his data pad with increasing desperation. There is no provision for subjects who refuse to engage. Maybe he doesn't understand the test, suggested Yora, her mandibles clicking nervously. As if responding to her question, Marcus Webb swallowed, brushed crumbs off his jumpsuit, and spoke again. Look, I've been traveling for 6 weeks through 7 different transit stations. I've eaten food that I'm pretty sure was still making executive decisions about its life choices. I've slept in bunks where the previous occupant was definitely not carbon-based, and I am not doing your weird platform game. Silence in the observation deck. The kind of silence that happens when the universe itself pauses to reconsider its choices. Did he just refuse? Kless asked. Before anyone could answer, the platforms vanished. The chasm sealed itself. And Marcus Webb, looking unsurprised, stood up and dusted off his pants. Phase 2, Ven said, voice tight. Initiate Phase 2. The walls began closing in, classic trash compactor scenario. We had borrowed the design from some human entertainment files, actually, which made this moment particularly ironic. The surfaces were lined with pressure sensors calibrated to stop before actual harm occurred, but the psychological stress was the point. Candidates would typically demonstrate problem solving, utilize tools, show us their capacity for innovation under pressure. Marcus Webb watched the walls approach with the enthusiasm of someone watching paint dry on a hull that was already the worst color imaginable. Then he did something that made my primary heart skip a beat and my secondary heart seriously consider early retirement. He lay down. Flat on his back, arms behind his head, like he was stargazing on some peaceful planetary surface instead of lying in a room actively trying to compress him into organic paste. "Stop the test," I said. "What?" Ven spun to face me, his face flaps fluttering with indignation. "Stop it. He's going to get crushed. The sensors will prevent actual harm, you know the protocols, cricks. Look at him. He's not moving. He's not going to move." We both looked. Marcus Webb had closed his eyes. The walls were 3 meters away. 2.5. 2. "Stop the test." Yora shouted, and this time Ven listened, slamming the emergency shutdown. The walls froze, leaving barely a meter of space. In that narrow corridor of not being crushed, Marcus Webb opened one eye, looked at the frozen wall beside his head, and spoke. "You know, if you wanted to kill me, there were easier ways." The cafeteria on Station 7 was already making a solid attempt. He sat up, somehow managing to unfold himself in the limited space without apparent effort, and walked toward the exit door that hadn't been activated yet. "Phase 3 is psychological evaluation," Ven said weakly, pulling up the next protocol. "We need to continue." "I am not sure that is wise," I began, but the human had already found a place to sit, this time on what was supposed to be an unstable examination platform. It stabilized under his weight immediately, as programmed. The room shifted to the therapy configuration, soft lighting, calming colors that our psychological consultants had assured us would work on 98% of known species. The evaluation sphere descended from the ceiling, its sensor array designed to read micro-expressions, hormonal changes, thermal signatures. It would ask questions, probe for weaknesses, map the psychological landscape. "Greetings, Marcus Webb," the sphere intoned in its carefully modulated voice. "Let us explore your inner landscape. Tell me about your fears." "That this job interview is going to last longer than the heat death of the universe," Marcus replied without missing a beat. The sphere recalibrated, its algorithms shuffling through response trees. "Your hostility suggests defensive mechanisms protecting childhood trauma. Would you say your relationship with parental figures was stable? Would you say this line of questioning is going anywhere productive? Because I can tell you right now, my mom makes great lasagna and my dad taught me how to fix things that weren't designed to be fixed. Which is actually why I applied here. The job posting said you needed engineers who could think outside standard parameters. Yet you refused to engage with our evaluation process." Marcus Webb leaned back on the platform, which adjusted automatically to support him, and for the first time since entering, he smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had figured out the punchline before the joke was finished. "Oh, I'm engaging. You just don't like how I'm engaging. See, here's the thing about humans. We've been testing each other since before we figured out fire was hot. Job interviews, school exams, military assessments, dating. We know what tests look like. We know what they're supposed to do." He gestured at the room around him. "This whole setup. It's not testing engineering skills. It's testing panic response. Compliance. Whether I'll do stupid things because authority figures told me to jump through hoops. But your job posting, the one that got distributed through official channels to Earth's Engineering Guild, asked for creative problem solvers who could handle unexpected situations. The sphere bobbed in what might have been confusion. So I solved your problems creatively. Problem 1, impossible platform sequence. Solution, don't play. The platforms weren't going to let me fall anyway, you've got safety protocols, I could see the energy barriers. Problem 2, crushing walls. Solution, call your bluff. Same safety protocols. Problem 3, psychological evaluation trying to find trauma buttons to push. Solution, be honest and point out that you're not actually evaluating what you claim to need. In the observation deck, no one breathed. Well, those of us who breathed. Kless didn't breathe, but his breathing equivalent stopped anyway. Venn was scrolling through files, cross-referencing, his face slowly shifting from irritation to something that might have been respect or might have been the early stages of a migraine. His species got both. Pull up the original job requisition, Venn said quietly. Yora complied, projecting it onto the main screen. We all read it again, words we had seen 100 times but never really considered. Required, engineering specialists capable of non-standard thinking, adaptive problem solving, and innovation in high-stress environments without established protocols. Oh no, I said. Oh yes, Venn replied, his tone suggesting he was having a religious experience, possibly involving minor deities of irony. In the testing chamber, Marcus Webb was still talking to the sphere. So here's my question for you. Are you actually interested in what the posting asked for, or did someone in your organization decide that what you really needed was people who follow orders without thinking? Because I can do both. I just need to know which job I'm actually applying for. The sphere rotated silently, processing. We had programmed it to handle aggression, depression, anxiety, even existential crisis. We had not programmed it to handle someone pointing out that the test was philosophically inconsistent with the stated job requirements. This is. Kless started, then stopped, unable to find words. A disaster, Yora finished. Brilliant, Venn said, and we all turned to stare at him. Don't you see? He's right. Completely, utterly right. We've been testing for compliance and calling it innovation. We designed an impossible test and expected candidates to fail gracefully, but he didn't fail. He rejected the premise. That wasn't an option, I protested. Exactly. There is no protocol for this because we never imagined someone would do it. That's actual creative thinking. Down in the chamber, Marcus Webb had stood up, apparently bored with waiting for the sphere to respond. Listen, I've got another station to catch if this isn't going anywhere. I appreciate the elaborate setup, really, very impressive holographics on that chasm effect. But I've been awake for 32 hours, I smell like recycled air and broken dreams, and I would really like to know if I have a job or if I should start looking at those mining positions on Kepler 447. He walked to the door, tested the handle, found it locked, and turned back to face the sphere. Also, whoever designed this room should know that the acoustic properties are terrible. I can hear everything you're saying in the observation deck. The vents carry sound really well. Something about the air circulation pattern. 17 species worth of observers simultaneously looked up at the ventilation system that had, apparently, betrayed us all. Hi there, Marcus Webb waved at us, somehow knowing exactly where to look despite the one-way glass. I'm Marcus. Nice to meet you. Any chance I could get some water? The protein bar was really salty. The emergency meeting convened in Conference Room 7, which was really just Conference Room 3 with delusions of grandeur and slightly better lighting. Venn had called together the entire evaluation committee, which meant 14 very confused administrators were now packed around a table designed for 8, trying to figure out what to do with the human currently raiding our break room vending machines. Yes, we let him out. What were we supposed to do, keep him locked in the testing chamber while we debated? That seemed like admitting defeat, and none of us were ready for that level of honesty. The rules are clear, stated Horvath, our legal compliance officer, her 6 fingers tapping anxiously on her data pad. Candidates must complete all phases of evaluation. He completed none of them. Counterpoint, Venn said, leaning forward with the intensity of someone who had just discovered religion, specifically the religion of being correct. He did complete them. Just not the way we anticipated. The first phase tested adaptive movement. He adapted by not moving. Second phase tested pressure response. He responded to pressure by eliminating it. Third phase tested psychological resilience. He demonstrated that by pointing out our psychological evaluation was nonsense. That is not how tests work, I interjected, though my conviction was wavering like a flag in a solar wind. Isn't it though? Yora asked, mandibles clicking in that way that meant she was thinking dangerous thoughts. We wanted non-standard thinking. He gave us non-standard thinking. We're just upset because his non-standard thinking made our standard testing look silly. It made us look incompetent. Horvik snapped. Maybe we are incompetent, Venn suggested cheerfully, which did not improve Horvik's mood or color, both of which were shifting toward aggressive purple. Through the conference room window, I could see Marcus Webb in the break area, examining a Quelthian pastry with deep suspicion. He poked it. It jiggled. He put it back and selected something that looked less sentient. We need to continue the evaluation, Horvik insisted. Protocol demands it. We have Phase 4 through Phase 9 still remaining. Oh good, Venn said, his sarcasm thick enough to require protective equipment. More tests he can deconstruct while making us question our career choices. I can't wait. What do you suggest then? Horvik challenged. Venn stood, walked to the window, and watched Marcus Webb negotiate with the beverage dispenser, which was notoriously difficult to operate even for species who designed it. I suggest we give him what he asked for, Venn said quietly. Water? Kless asked, confused. No. Well, yes, also water. But he asked us which job he was actually applying for. The compliant one or the innovative one? I suggest we answer that question honestly, and then test accordingly. You want to change the entire evaluation protocol, Horvik said flatly, for one candidate. I want to admit that our evaluation protocol is testing for the wrong things, and this one candidate had the nerve to point it out. If we're actually hiring for innovation, we need to test for innovation. Not compliance disguised as problem solving. The debate that followed could be heard 3 corridors away, according to later reports. Horvik argued regulations. Venn argued common sense. Yora argued philosophical implications. I mostly argued that we should all calm down and think rationally, which is what you say when you don't have a better argument but want to sound wise. Eventually, we reached a compromise, which is what happens when everyone is too tired to keep fighting but no one actually agrees. We would give Marcus Webb a real engineering problem. 1 hour later, I escorted the human back to the testing chamber, which we had hastily reconfigured into something resembling an actual workspace. Gone were the holographic chasms and psychological torture spheres. In their place, a workbench, tools, component libraries, and one very broken piece of equipment. Marcus Webb looked around, clutching his water bottle like it was the only sane thing in the universe, which, to be fair, it might have been. This is different, he observed. We decided to try a different approach, I explained, trying to sound professional despite the fact that my dignity had left the building sometime during Phase 2. This is a standard shipboard environmental regulator. Critical component. It's broken. Fix it. He set down his water bottle and approached the workbench, examining the regulator with actual interest for the first time since arriving. What's broken about it? He asked. If we knew that, we wouldn't need engineers, I replied, which earned me a surprised laugh. Fair point. Do I get a manual? No. Schematics? No. Any information at all about how this thing is supposed to work? You get the tools on the workbench and the component library. Figure it out. He looked at me, looked at the regulator, looked back at me. Now this is an actual test, he said, and smiled. Not the sharp smile from earlier. A real one. The kind that suggested he was actually enjoying himself. Then he asked the question that would become legendary in evaluation committee lore. Can I have a pen? I blinked, which takes effort when you have horizontal eyelids. A pen? Yeah, you know, writing instrument. Ink delivery system. Something to make marks on surfaces. We have digital notation systems. I gestured at the provided data pad. I think better with a pen, he said simply. So I got him a pen. Well, technically I got him 3 pens because our supply closet hadn't been organized since the previous administration, and I grabbed whatever looked pen adjacent. One was definitely a medical instrument. One might have been a ceremonial object from the Clethian delegation. The third was actually a pen. Marcus Webb took the actual pen, found some scrap material, and got to work. What happened over the next 4 hours was genuinely fascinating, which I say as someone who had watched 3,000 candidates complete evaluations and found most of them as interesting as watching hull paint oxidize. He didn't start by disassembling the regulator. He started by drawing. Sketching out diagrams, making notes, creating what looked like flowcharts mixed with artistic renderings of component relationships. He talked to himself constantly, a running commentary of observations and theories. Okay, so if this connects here, and energy flows this way, then this component is probably a buffer, unless it's a transformer, but the size suggests buffer, so let's assume buffer and see what breaks with that assumption. He would test a theory, watch it fail, make a note, adjust his mental model, and try again. No frustration. No panic. Just methodical problem solving punctuated by occasional sarcastic commentary directed at the regulator itself. Oh, you want to be difficult? That's fine. I once fixed a water purifier using duct tape and spite. You don't scare me. In the observation deck, the committee watched in silence. Even Horvath had stopped complaining, too fascinated by the process unfolding below. He's mapping the system entirely from observable behavior, Yora whispered. Building a functional model without any baseline knowledge. That's impossible, Horvath said, but without conviction. Tell him that, Venn replied. 3 hours in, Marcus Webb sat back, stretched, drank some water, and stared at his notes. Then he did something unexpected. He turned to face our observation window. I know you're watching. I have a question. Venn activated the communication system. Go ahead. Is this regulator from a Telrix-class cruiser or a Venton-class frigate? Because the energy signature suggests Telrix, but the component where pattern suggests Venton, and that matters for what I do next. Silence in the observation deck. We hadn't told him what ship class it came from. That information wasn't available anywhere in the testing chamber. How did you? I started. The scorch marks on the secondary coil. Different alloys oxidize differently under thermal stress. Telrix uses a titanium composite. Venton uses augmented steel. This is steel, but the configuration is Telrix standard, which means someone did a field repair using wrong spec parts. He wasn't asking us to confirm. He was thinking out loud, working through implications. Which means, he continued, the failure probably cascaded from the incompatible repair, not from the original components. So I need to find what broke because of the mismatch, not what broke originally. He turned back to the regulator and, with confidence that seemed almost supernatural, removed a specific component, examined it, nodded to himself, and began fabricating a replacement from the parts library. He's correct, Yora said, pulling up the regulator's history file. That unit came from the Telrix cruiser Wandering Prophet. It received emergency repairs at Station 12 using Venton-class components because they were out of proper stock. Marcus Webb worked for another 40 minutes, replacing components, realigning systems, making micro-adjustments with steady hands. Finally, he stepped back, hit the activation switch, and the regulator hummed to life, all indicators showing green. Done, he announced. Though whoever did that field repair should probably receive additional training. Or be kept away from critical systems. Possibly both. Ven stood, straightening his tunic with a decisive gesture that suggested important decisions were being made. That's it, he announced. I'm approving his placement. We still have 5 more evaluation phases. Horvath protested. Which will tell us nothing that we don't already know. He can think creatively, work independently, solve problems without established protocols, and he can do it while being sarcastic, which frankly makes him perfect for engineering corps. They're all like that. This is highly irregular, Horvath warned. Good. Regular hasn't been working. Let's try irregular. 20 minutes later, I was back in the testing chamber, now workspace, with official placement documentation. Marcus Webb was cleaning up his area, organizing tools with the care of someone who respected equipment, even when that equipment belonged to people who had tried to crush him with moving walls. Marcus Webb, I said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Engineering Corps, I'm pleased to offer you placement as a Level 3 engineering specialist, with assignment to the Deep Space Vessel Nomadic Theory. He took the data pad, scanned the details, and then looked up at me with that same tired, knowing smile. Level 3. After all that, I'm starting at Level 3. Level assignments are based on experience and credentials, not test performance, I explained. Sure. Makes sense. He signed the documentation with the pen he had borrowed, which he then tried to hand back. Keep it, I said. Apparently you think better with it. Thanks. He pocketed the pen, picked up his water bottle, and headed for the door. Then he paused and turned back. Can I ask you something? Of course. Did anyone ever actually pass your original test? The platforms and the walls and the therapy sphere? I considered lying, then decided honesty was less exhausting. No. No one ever passed. That was the point. We wanted to see how people handled impossible situations. By making them fail. By observing how they failed. Marcus Webb nodded slowly, processing this information with an expression that suggested he was filing it away for future reference and possible mockery. You know what's funny, he said. You could have just asked. Could have interviewed us. Asked about previous failures, how we handled them, what we learned. Would have been faster than building elaborate death rooms. That wouldn't have been objective, I protested. Right. Because watching people panic is very scientific. He shook his head, but he was smiling. I'm going to like working here. You all need so much help. And with that, Marcus Webb, the human who had defeated our impossible test by refusing to take it, walked out to begin his career with the Galactic Engineering Corps. In the observation deck, Ven was already drafting new evaluation protocols. Horvath was filing formal complaints. Yora was laughing. And I was wondering if maybe, just maybe, the humans had been testing us all along. The answer, I would learn over the following years working alongside Marcus Webb and others of his species, was yes. Always yes. They were always testing us. And we kept failing in the most entertaining ways possible.